What is up, YouTube? Before I get into the video, let me remind you, if you like my content, please hit that like and subscribe button. Also, if you want to be notified when the videos hit the internet, hit the bell icon. And finally, if you feel the need to support me, hit me up on my Patreon at patreon.com/uncommonramen, capital U, capital R. I do all of this in my free time, so any amount of support can help me bring more of this content to you more often. All right, without further ado, we are going to take a look at another deck tech. Today we're looking at Melek, Is It Paragon? This is probably one of the most frustrating decks I have to play. Partially because in the numerous amount of times that I've played it, it just doesn't play the way I want it to play. Now, the idea behind this deck is that we want to cast spells, okay? And what ends up happening is either A, I get all of my setup stuff and no spells, or B, I get all of my spells and none of my setup stuff, so I don't get to take advantage of the true power that this deck has. So we're going to go into the deck and really talk about what we have in here and what the purpose is. Melek, Is It Paragon is a 2/4 for 6. You have to play with the top card of your library revealed, and you can cast the top card of your library if it is an instant or sorcery card. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell from your library, you get to copy it. So not only do we want to play spells, we want to play them from the top of our library so we can copy them. So we've got a lot of things here that synergize with copying spells as well. It is red-blue, so this is kind of the MO of the deck. So let's take this off screen. And we're going to start by looking at the big meat of the deck, which is the spells that we want to cast. So you can see this is a large portion of the deck. We're going to start with Expansion, Explosion. This is a given. This one you should have in red-blue decks in general. Expansion copies. Explosion allows you to deal X damage and draw X cards. This is a great way to kill an opponent and then draw a whole bunch of incidental cards in the process. And in general, it's just a really good instant. Next up, we have Telling Time. We're going to have a lot of these where they cost very little and they have a very strange effect. All in all, very good for you. We also have Lightning Bolt, Mystical Tutor to help find instants and sorceries that we need specifically. We have Twiddle, and you might be asking, why does he have Twiddle in the deck? This goes infinite with a certain set of things, and I will go into that when I see it, but essentially with Twiddle and the specific things that you need, you get infinite colored mana, and that can help close out a game, especially with one of the other cards in here. Big Score, a very cheap spell to get some treasure tokens and some cards off of. Narset's Reversal. This is just a really good card in general, but this also can go infinite with a specific set of cards as well. I don't remember exactly all of the cards or exactly how the interaction works, but I will show you the remaining card when I get to it. We got Counterspell. Obviously, Counter Magic is incredibly important. We got Negate, again, more Counter Magic. Chaos Warp for spot removal. Frantic Search is what Narset's Reversal goes infinite with, and it's basically infinite looting, so that you can get the cards that you need when you need them. But I don't remember exactly how the interaction works. Somehow, this card gets back into your hand, and because one part gets to cast, it untaps the lands necessary. Somehow I think it has to do with Twinning Staff or something. I don't remember exactly how it works, but somehow it goes infinite. Next up, we have Brainstorm, Factor Fiction, Faithless Looting, Mystic Retrieval, so that we can get the sorceries or instants back into our hand. Has flashback, so can't go wrong. Preordain. Epic Experiment is just a great way to literally search for some card that you absolutely need and then cast it for free. Past in Flames to give it all flashback. We have Opt, Is It Charm, Vandal Blast, Serum Visions, Ponder, See the Truth, another weird card with very weird interaction but very cheap and super good. This gets better Let's see if the spell was cast from any. Yeah, so this gets better if it's cast from the graveyard or cast from the top of the library, which is exactly what Melek wants to do in the first place. Since we're casting spells, we also need to make sure that we have the mana to do so, and blue-red isn't known for having, you know, the most reliable ramp. So we have Seething Song in here as a ritual, Jessica's Will, and Mana Geyser. These are all just really good rituals. Jessica's Will is also incredible because we can cast creatures or cards from exile. We also have a bunch of cards in here that are going to copy repeated reverberations to get multiple copies. Galvanic Iteration, we're going to copy, but also has flashback. Increasing Vengeance, another way to copy things, also has flashback, and when it gets flashbacked, it copies even more. And then, of course, Bonus Round, super good card. Mizzix's Mastery, another one of those things where we're going to get a bunch of copies, and things like Twinning Staff are going to see that and create even more copies, so it's a good way to kind of shut out a game. And we have our board wipes, or, you know, well, yeah, basically board wipes. So we have Cyclonic Rift, Comet Storm. This actually doubles as a win condition as well, because I believe it does it to players too, right? Choose any number of any target, yeah. This, with the proper amount of storming via Thousand Year Storm, can shut out a game completely. We'll have Immolating Gyre. It sees the number of instants and sorceries in your graveyard, and if you're casting a bunch of these, you should have quite a few. And then just board wipes. And then, of course, we have Blasphemous Act, best red board wipe you can have. So those are the instants and sorceries. We're trying to get as many of those off the top of our library as possible, or cast them from our hand. The point is just casting spells. Next up, we're going to have a suite of things that want to see spells cast and give you benefits for doing so. So we're going to take a look. We have Talrand, Sky Summoner. It sees instants and sorceries, and in return gives us 2/2 Drakes. We got Niv Mizzet Perun. It sees, I think, what is it? Instant and sorcery? Yeah, it sees instant and sorceries and lets us draw cards. And when we draw cards, we deal damage. So just incidental damage. Gutter Snipe sees instant and sorceries and deals damage. So is it each opponent? It's each opponent. So it's even better because we're going to hit every opponent at the table. Just a fantastic card, especially as we get into things with the Thousand Year Storm. This could easily just destroy people. Obliterate them, if you will. We got Harmonic Prodigy. Harmonic Prodigy is a panharmonicon for wizards and shamans. And so Talrand, Niv Mizzet, Gutter Snipe, Melek, all of them are either a wizard or a shaman. So it's going to, with Gutter Snipe, double down the 2 damage. With Talrand, it's going to double down the number of Drakes that we get. With Niv Mizzet, it's going to double down the number of cards we draw and the amount of damage that we deal. Not only because we're drawing extra cards, but because it also just straight up doubles the amount of damage that's being done. So Harmonic Prodigy in this deck is absolutely insane. We got Varen, Voice of Duality, who is also a wizard. So again, Harmonic Prodigy is going to see that. It has Magecraft, and in this case, the Magecraft, it gets plus, it's basically prowess, except for only instants and sorceries, but it sees both cast and copy. And then also, if casting or copying a instant or sorcery spell causes a triggered ability on a permanent you control to trigger, the ability triggers an additional time. So it has a very similar effect to Harmonic Prodigy, where things like Gutter Snipe, Talrand, and Niv Mizzet are going to have those triggers be seen and double down on those triggers. Melek as well. We have Archmage Emeritus, another wizard. Magecraft for drawing a card, super good. We got Stormkiln Artist, another shaman, and it sees instants and sorceries being cast, gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control, and creates a treasure for each instant and sorcery you cast. So it just gets bigger for each time you cast a spell, and it gives you mana value. It's just a really incredible card. It commands like a $5 price right now because it's just super good. Then we have Murmuring Mystic, sees instants and sorceries and creates blue birds in response. We got Young Pyromancer, sees instants and sorceries and creates red elementals. We've got Ral Storm Conduit. It sees instants and sorceries, both cast or copy, and deals 1 damage to is it target opponent? Yeah, target opponent or planeswalker. And again, I'd like to point out that everything that we looked at previously, we got a shaman, a wizard, a shaman. They're all shamans, they're all wizards. So Harmonic Prodigy sees all of that. Ral, it's not going to do anything about because Ral's a planeswalker, but we keep moving on. We've got Double Vision. It's an enchantment that whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, doubles it, copies it basically. Not basically, it does. It copies it, and again, things like Twinning Staff are going to see that and copy it again. So it just makes this really crazy. We have Arcane Bombardment. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, exile an instant or sorcery card at random from your graveyard. Then copy each card exiled with Arcane Bombardment. You may cast any number of the copies without paying their mana cost. This card is absolutely bonkers insane with Twinning Staff and just in general by itself. This is just a very good card. You'll get a tremendous amount of value from it, unless of course it gets destroyed really quickly, which it should because it's just a stupidly good card. Next up we have Swarm Intelligence. It sees instants and sorceries, and you basically just get to copy them. And again, the idea here is to cast and copy as often as possible. And then finally we have Thousand Year Storm. I think that's finally. Yeah, finally we have Thousand Year Storm. This is absolutely beautiful, but also absolutely kill on sight. Every time you cast a spell, you are going to copy that spell a number of times equal to the number of spells that had been cast previously. So the first time you cast a spell, nothing's going to happen. But the second time you cast the spell, whatever spell you cast is going to get copied 1 time. The next time, whatever spell you cast is going to get copied 2 times, so on and so forth. And this actually goes infinite with Twiddle if you throw Twiddle onto Isochron Scepter, which is in here. And at that point, what you're doing is an infinite amount of colored mana and an infinite storm count. And when you get to an infinite storm count, things like Lightning Bolt will kill the entire table. Okay, so those are the cards that interact with playing spells. So next up, because we're playing spells and not all of them cost only 1, we also want to include things that reduce the cost of spells. So we have things like Barrel Chief of Compliance, which not only reduces the cost of instants and sorceries by 1, but whenever a spell or ability you control counters a spell, you may draw a card if you do discard a card. So we get to draw some cards just from countering, and that's kind of what blue does. We have Goblin Electromancer, which just sees instants and sorceries reduced by 1. We have Primal Amulet, which also does the same thing. It sees instants and sorceries reduced by 1, but it also receives a charge counter every time you cast an instant or sorcery, and when it has 4 or more charge counters, it transforms into Primal Wellspring, which you can tap to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, and when that mana is spent to cast an instant or sorcery spell, you get to copy that spell. And again, what better thing than copying spells, especially when a Twinning Staff is on the table. And then finally, we have Jace's Sanctum. Again, we see instants and sorceries reduced by 1, and whenever you cast an instant or sorcery, you get to scry 1, so we get to kind of set up our turns. Or at least try. Along with copying spells, we need more things to copy spells, right? So we have these lovely cards in here. Pyromancer's Goggles. This doubles as a rock, but if you use the mana to cast an instant or sorcery spell, you get to copy that instant or sorcery spell. It's just really freaking good. The fact that it costs 5 kind of sucks, but it is what it is. And then finally, we have Twinning Staff. If you would copy a spell 1 or more times, instead copy it that many times plus an additional time. And then you can, so just by itself, if it sees a copy happen, it's going to copy again. But for 7, you can tap it and copy an instant or sorcery spell. It is not the most efficient thing to do, but it definitely is there. So it is self-sufficient on its own. Next up, we have some cards in here that are designed to help make it easier to cast certain spells, and also designed to do a number of other things. So let's just take a look. We have Hypersonic Dragon in here. This is 4/4 flying haste. Whenever you cast, or sorry, you may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. So this is really important because if the top card of your library is a sorcery, Melek will see that. You don't necessarily want to have that sitting on top of your library because you can only cast that during your turn. With this card, you can actually cast it at any point in time, so it really lends to a strategy of drawing your card and then just saying go, basically. Next up, we have the Reality Chip. Reality Chip allows you to look at the top card of your library at any point in time, and also if it is equipped to a creature, or sorry, attached to a creature, you can play lands and cast spells from the top of your library. This is very helpful in the sense that we can get rid of lands from the top of our library that Melek can't interact with, and also it's super helpful if Melek isn't in play because we can still cast the cards from the top of our library. And again, side by side with Hypersonic Dragon, we can cast those sorceries at instant speed. Next up, we have Isochron Scepter. It is in here for obvious reasons. It goes infinite with Twiddle, but it also is just a darn good utility card for almost anything that just costs 2. You can slap a counterspell on here, and then you have a counterspell on a stick. Granted, of course, that makes it a target. That's not the point. Isochron Scepter is just a really good card. And then finally, we have Sensei's Divining Top. There is no way to get unstuck if there is a land on top of your library, so Sensei's Divining Top kind of helps to change that for you so that you can continue casting spells from the top of your library. And in general is just a really fantastic card. Next up, we're going to take a look at the Mana Rocks. We got ourselves an Arcane Signet, a Talisman of Creativity, a Soul Ring, a Mind Stone, and an Izzet Signet. These are all pretty simple, and they're also all generally the ones that you would play in Izzet decks anyway. Next up, we are going to take a look at the lands, starting with Command Tower. We also have Evolving Wilds. We have Fabled Passage. Izzet Boiler Works. Mystic Sanctuary not only counts as an island, but if it comes into play untapped, you get to return a sorcery or instant from your graveyard to the top of your library. So we get extra value from that. We have Reliquary Tower to kill our hand size. Scalding Tarn is a fetch land. Shivan Reef, a pain land. Steam Vents, a shock land. Stormcarved Coast, a check land. Sulphur Falls, another check land. Swiftwater Cliffs, which is a tap land that gains you life. You can actually switch this out for the Dominaria United land with the land typings on it, just simply because it's just outright better. We have Temple of Epiphany, which is the scry land. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 islands, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 mountains. So that is Melek. Again, on paper, it seems like it should function relatively well. And I don't know if I've just been having like tremendously bad luck with it. But as I was mentioning, a lot of the time I end up with, a bunch of setup spells like, for instance, Jace's Sanctum or Primordial Amulet, Emeritus, stuff like that, and literally no spells. And in those situations, even after casting Melek and looking at the top card of my library, I still am not seeing spells. I'm just looking at permanents. Or it's the opposite way around, where I have a whole bunch of spells in hand and none of that original setup stuff, like the cost reducers or the stuff that benefits from spells being cast. So I'm not getting the proper value from those spells. And honestly, you almost need some of that setup at the beginning so that you can shut out a game in general. I'm looking for it to have a fine balance where it has some of those permanents and some of the spells, and then we're using some of the stuff in there to make sure that the top card is a spell or castable, or at least casts into another card that might be good for setup. All in all, though, frustrating as crap. I don't know what's going on with it. But still, I enjoy playing the deck, and I would love to see it pop off one of these days. And that's basically it. If you have any questions or comments, leave those down below, but let's keep it positive. I'll be removing any negative comments. And yeah, until next time, guys. Peace.